We just want to buy food. Poor twins sell a family painting to a young billionaire, but when he sees who's in the picture, he starts to cry. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the skyscrapers when Sadie opened the refrigerator for the third time that day. The rumbling in her stomach wouldn't let her sleep. The dim light illuminated the same bleak scene: a half-empty bottle of water, a hollowed-out tub of butter, and a few forgotten condiment packets. Nothing to eat. Is there anything in there? Nora, her twin sister, asked from the small kitchen table, where she was fiddling with a worn-down pencil. Nothing, Sadie replied, closing the door with a sigh. Although they were only 5 years old, the two understood very well what it meant to be hungry. In the next room, Claire, the girl's mother, scanned the classifieds in the newspaper, searching for job openings. She circled promising ads with a red pen, but the circles were becoming increasingly rare. 3 months unemployed, and her savings had run out last week. The rent was late. Bills were piling up, and now even the food was gone. Claire ran a hand through her brown hair and tried to hold back tears. She couldn't let the girls see her desperation. She had sent her resume everywhere possible, had interviews, but always heard the same response: "We'll be in touch." The phone never rang. "Mommy," Nora called, entering the room with Sadie right behind her. "We're hungry." Claire forced a smile, her heart aching. "I know you are, sweethearts. Tomorrow will be better, I promise. Now try to get some more sleep, okay?" The girls looked at each other. They were little but not foolish. They had heard the same promise for the past few days. Come on, Nora." Sadie pulled her sister back to the room they shared. It was a tiny space with 2 twin beds and an old dresser. On the peeling wall, a single framed painting hung, drawing attention, the only beautiful thing in that cramped apartment. It was a hand-painted family portrait in a dark wood frame. It showed people the girls didn't know, from a time they hadn't lived. Claire had told them they were her grandparents and great-grandparents, in front of a country house that no longer existed. "It's the only memory I have of my family," she would say, whenever the girls asked about the painting. Nora sat on the bed, clutching her stomach. "I can't sleep when I'm hungry." Sadie looked at the painting, then at her sister. An idea began to form in her head. What if we sell the painting? Mommy's painting. She'll be sad. "But she's sadder when we're hungry," Sadie argued. "We'll buy food and then explain it to her." Nora hesitated, but the rumbling in her stomach spoke louder. "How are we going to sell it? There are a lot of rich people downtown. They can pay for the painting and we can buy food." The plan was risky, but in the minds of the 2 children, it made perfect sense. They waited for Claire to fall asleep, exhausted after another fruitless day of searching. Carefully, Sadie climbed onto a chair and took the painting off the wall. It was heavier than she had imagined. "Come on, let's wrap it," she whispered to her sister. They found an old newspaper and wrapped the painting as best they could. The result wasn't pretty, but it would have to do. The 2 dressed silently, took the spare key Claire kept in a kitchen drawer, and with their hearts racing, they left the apartment. The elevator was broken, as always. They went down 5 flights of stairs, trying not to make a sound. The old building seemed even spookier at night, with flickering lights and strange shadows on the walls. But the fear of hunger was greater than any other. On the street, the cold night air greeted them. The neighborhood where they lived was modest, with worn-down buildings and poorly lit streets. Sadie held Nora's hand tightly, along with the partially wrapped painting. "Where are we going?" Nora asked, her voice trembling. "To downtown, where the expensive stores are." They walked for about 20 minutes, following the path they took with their mother to the bus stop. The streets grew brighter as they neared the commercial district. Shiny storefronts displayed clothes, jewelry, and other items the girls could only admire from a distance. It was past 8 o'clock at night, but downtown was still busy. People hurried by with shopping bags, couples held hands, and executives spoke on their cell phones. No one paid any attention to 2 small children carrying a poorly wrapped painting. "How will we know who wants to buy it?" Nora murmured, intimidated by the crowd. Sadie looked around, searching for someone who seemed nice. Her eyes landed on a tall man in a dark suit who had just stepped out of a luxury boutique. He had graying hair at his temples and a serious face, but he didn't look scary. "Let's talk to that man," Sadie decided, pulling Nora along. John Miller had just bought a ridiculously expensive watch he didn't need. It was just another item for his collection, another object to fill the emptiness of the mansion where he lived alone. At 45, he had built a financial empire but rarely smiled. Professional success contrasted sharply with personal loneliness. No wife, no children, no true friends. He was about to get into his car when he felt a tug on the sleeve of his coat. "Mister," a child's voice called. "Mister, please." John looked down and saw two identical girls with brown hair and big eyes. They couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. One of them was holding a framed painting, poorly wrapped in old newspaper, with part of the dark wood frame showing. "What are you two doing out here alone?" he asked, frowning. "Where are your parents?" "We want to sell this," Sadie said, holding up the painting she carried. "Do you want to buy it?" John glanced around looking for an adult who might be with the children. He saw no one paying them any attention. "You shouldn't be out at this hour. It's dangerous for you to be alone." "Please," Nora insisted, her eyes welling up. "We just want to buy food." Something in the simplicity of those words hit John like a punch to the gut. Children asking to buy food, not toys or candy. "Let me see that painting," he said, his tone softening. Sadie handed the painting to John, who removed the rest of the newspaper. It was an old painting, well preserved, showing a family in front of a country house. The style was typical of the early 20th century. When his eyes focused on the faces in the portrait, his heart stopped. With a jolt, he recognized the house, the country estate where he had spent the summers of his childhood, and the faces. They were his grandparents, his aunts and uncles, his parents. It was a portrait of his own family. His hands began to tremble. He had completely forgotten about this painting, a family heirloom that had stayed with his sister Claire when they had a falling out 7 years ago. He didn't even remember its existence. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "It's from our house," Nora replied, not understanding the man's reaction. "It's the only painting we have." "Who is your mother?" John asked, already suspecting the answer. "Claire," Sadie said. "Claire Miller." John's knees nearly buckled. Claire Miller, his younger sister, with whom he had cut ties 7 years ago. Their relationship had shattered when John, consumed by his own success and ambition, pushed his family away. His arrogance and selfishness had created a chasm between them. He only thought of himself, his empire, while Claire tried to uphold their family values. He never imagined she'd had children after they grew apart. And now, these 5-year-old girls stood before him. "Where is your mother?" he asked, trying to control his emotions. "She's at home," Nora explained. "No job, no food." "Mommy looks for jobs in the paper every day," Sadie added, "but nobody calls her." John took a deep breath, trying to process the information. These were his nieces, Claire's daughters, and they were starving. His own family was suffering while he lived in luxury, indifferent to the world. "Are you hungry?" he asked, carefully setting the painting aside. Both girls nodded vigorously. "Let's get something to eat then, and you can tell me more about your mother." He took the girls to a nearby diner, a cozy place with wooden booths and soft lighting. The twins looked at everything with wide eyes, as if they had never been in such a place before. "You can order whatever you want," John said as they sat down. "Really?" Sadie asked in disbelief. "Really?" The girls ordered burgers, French fries, and milkshakes. They ate with such gusto that John felt a pang in his chest. As they ate, he asked subtle questions, trying to understand Claire's situation. "How long has your mum been out of work?" "A long time," Sadie replied between bites. "She looks in the newspaper every day." "And where do you live?" "In an old building," Nora said, "on the 5th floor, but the elevator is broken." "And your father?" John hesitated to ask this question. The twins looked at each other, confused. "We don't have a dad," Sadie answered simply. John nodded, 1,000 questions running through his mind. What had happened to the girl's father? Why had Claire never reached out to him for help, even in such a dire situation? "Mommy doesn't talk about him much," Nora commented, biting into a fry. "She says he was nice, but he went away to heaven." "We never met him," Sadie added. John fell silent, absorbing the information. The girl's father had passed away. and Claire had faced everything alone. A feeling of guilt began to grow inside him. While he was building his fortune, his sister was struggling to survive. "Mommy sometimes cries looking at the painting," Nora said suddenly. "She says it's from her family." "And it is," John confirmed, feeling his throat tighten. "It's from our family." "Ours?" Sadie asked, confused. John realized he had said too much. "I mean, from your mum's family." The girls continued eating, oblivious to the storm of emotions John was experiencing. To them, he was just a kind man who had bought their painting and given them food. To him, it was a reunion with a part of his life he had left behind. As the twins finished their milkshakes, John observed every detail. The way Sadie blinked quickly when she was excited, just like Claire used to. The way Nora tilted her head when she was thoughtful, a Miller family trait. How had he not noticed immediately? They were the spitting image of his sister. "Is the painting important to your mother?" he asked when they finished eating. "Yes, it is," Nora replied. "It's the only pretty thing in our house." "Mommy's going to be sad," Sadie said, looking regretful for the first time. "But we were really hungry." John's heart ached. "Don't worry. I'll keep the painting safe. One day maybe it will come back to you." The girls smiled, relieved. John called the waiter and paid the bill. While they waited for the change, he wondered how he would approach Claire after so many years. The pride that had stopped him from contacting her now seemed so small, so insignificant in the face of the reality he had just discovered. "Was, how much are you going to pay for the painting?" Sadie asked, bringing John back to the present. He smiled, for the first time that night. "I'll pay $100. Is that a good price?" The girls' eyes widened. They had never seen so much money. "That's a lot," Nora exclaimed. John took the money from his wallet and gave it to the girls. "Here you go. Buy food for yourselves and for your mother." Sadie took the bills carefully, as if they were made of glass. "Thank you, mister. We're going to buy so much food," Nora said excitedly. "Mommy is going to be so happy." John watched the girls put the money in their coat pockets. They were so small, so vulnerable. How could Claire let them go out alone at night? Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she was so desperate that the girls decided to take matters into their own hands. "You need to go home now," John said, looking at his watch. "Your mother must be worried." "We know the way," Sadie assured him. John hesitated. Should he take them? But if he showed up at Claire's door after so many years, unannounced, it might make things worse. He needed to think about how to approach his sister. "Are you sure you know how to get back?" "Yes," Nora confirmed. "We walked here." John decided the best strategy would be to follow them discreetly, find out where they lived, and then plan how to reconnect with Claire. "Then be careful, and buy food for your mom, too." The girls nodded, tucking the money into their pockets. They got up from the table and, to John's surprise, each gave him a hug around his waist. "Thank you for the food," Sadie said. "And for the money," Nora added. John felt a lump in his throat. "You're welcome." The twins left the diner, chatting excitedly about what they would buy with the money. John watched them through the window, so small and determined, crossing the busy sidewalk. He waited a few minutes, paid the bill, and left as well. In the distance, he spotted the two of them walking hand in hand. Their brown curls bounced with each step. Discreetly, he began to follow them. He kept a safe distance so as not to scare them, but close enough not to lose sight of them. With each block they walked, the businesses became simpler, the streets less lit. They left behind the glittering storefronts, the expensive restaurants, the luxury cars. John realized they were entering a much poorer part of the city. The girls stopped at a small corner grocery store, still open at that hour. John stood across the street, watching as they went inside. 10 minutes later, they came out carrying 2 plastic bags that looked heavy for their small arms. He continued following them for a few more blocks. Finally, they stopped in front of an old 5-story building. The facade was peeling, some windows had broken panes, and the entrance had no doorman or security system. The twins went up the front steps and disappeared into the dimly lit lobby. John stood on the opposite sidewalk, looking at the dilapidated building. This was where his sister was, his family, living in conditions he couldn't even imagine, while he amassed fortunes. He felt shame, guilt, regret, emotions he had avoided for years. Why had he let pride get the better of him? Why had he never tried to make contact, even though he knew where Claire used to work? His arrogance, his self-centeredness, had blinded him to what truly mattered. Now he had a chance to fix things. It wouldn't be easy. Claire probably hated him, and rightfully so. But those girls, his nieces, needed help. And he was finally ready to be the brother he had never been. He looked at the building one more time, memorizing the address. Tomorrow, he would come back. Tomorrow, he would start to mend the mistakes of the past. With the family painting under his arm, John turned and walked slowly back to his car. He had a lot to think about, a lot to plan. The life he knew was about to change forever, and for the first time in years, he felt something like hope. John couldn't sleep that night. The image of the twins, so small and vulnerable, wouldn't leave his mind. The family painting, now propped on his desk, seemed to watch him with accusing eyes. 7 years. 7 years with no contact with Claire. The next morning, he cancelled all his meetings. For the first time in years, the financial empire could wait. There was something more important to do. He drove back to the neighborhood where he had seen the girls enter the old building. He parked his luxury car a safe distance away and waited. He wanted to see Claire, but he wasn't ready for a direct confrontation yet. He needed to understand the situation better first. The sun was already high when he spotted the twins leaving the building, hand in hand. They wore simple but clean clothes. Sadie carried a small, colorful backpack, while Nora had a faded blue lunchbox. John smiled involuntarily. Even in poverty, Claire kept her daughters well cared for. The girls walked along the broken sidewalk, jumping over puddles left by the previous night's rain. John followed them on foot, keeping his distance. He saw them enter a public school a few blocks away. The building needed a new coat of paint, and the playground was small, but the children entering seemed excited. Instead of leaving, John waited. He wanted to see Claire. Maybe she walked the girls to school every morning, but after 20 minutes, he concluded that the twins probably went alone. More evidence of his sister's difficult situation, unable to walk her daughters to school, likely because she needed to look for work. He decided to go back to the building. If he was lucky, he might find Claire leaving for a job interview. He could see her from a distance without being noticed. The building looked even more dilapidated in the daylight. 5 stories, no working elevator, a peeling facade, some windows with broken panes replaced by cardboard. John tried to imagine Claire and the girls climbing those stairs every day. The thought deeply unsettled him. He didn't see Claire, but he observed the residents coming and going. Simple people, tired workers, a few mothers with young children. No one there seemed to have an easy life. An elderly man was sweeping the entrance, trying to maintain some dignity in that forgotten place. "Are you looking for someone, sir?" the old man asked, noticing John's presence. "Just getting to know the neighborhood," John replied, uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "I'm thinking of investing in the area." The old man let out a dry laugh. "Investing here? Nobody invests here, son. Buddy. This place has been forgotten by the world." John moved closer, seeing an opportunity. "Do many people live in this building?" "About 15 families, more or less. Good, hard-working people, but down on their luck." The old man leaned on his broom. "On the 5th floor, for instance, there's Claire with her girls, a single mom, all alone in the world. Does cleaning gigs when she can find them, but it's tough, poor thing." John's heart raced upon hearing his sister's name. "Claire? Does she live with 2 little girls?" "The twins, yes. Polite little girls, those 2. Always help me carry my groceries when they see me on the street. Their mother raised them well." John felt a mix of pride and shame. Claire had always been the best person in the family, always concerned about others, and he, with all his money, had never bothered to find out how she was doing. "Do you know this?" "Claire? Well, not really. She's private, you know, proud, never asks for help, even when she needs it. I've offered her soup a few times, but she always says everything's fine." The old man shook his head. "But you can tell when it's not, especially because of the children." John thanked him for the conversation and walked away, pretending to be interested in other buildings in the area. When the old man went inside, he crossed the street and looked up, counting the windows. 5th floor. Which one would be Claire's apartment? He saw simple clothes hanging on a makeshift clothesline in one of the windows. He recognized small, colorful t-shirts, probably belonging to the twins. That must be the apartment. The window was open, and John could see a sliver of the interior. Peeling walls, old furniture. So different from the mansion where they grew up, so different from everything Claire deserved. A movement caught his attention. A woman passed quickly by the window, brown hair tied in a simple bun, a thin but still beautiful face. Claire, his sister. John's heart ached. There she was, so close and yet so far. The last time they had seen each other, they had exchanged harsh words. He had accused her of being foolish, of having no ambition. She had called him selfish, of having forgotten the family's values. They both said things they later regretted, but pride prevented them from taking the first step toward reconciliation. And now, 7 years later, there was Claire, struggling alone to raise 2 daughters, while he accumulated more money than he could spend in several lifetimes. John walked back to his car slowly, his mind reeling with thoughts. The contrast between his life and Claire's was stark, painful. How had he not realized it before? How had he allowed pride to blind his heart for so long? On the drive back to his mansion, he was on autopilot. The city passed by like a blur through the car window. Mansions, luxury buildings, shopping malls, signs of a prosperity that didn't reach everyone. His world was a privileged bubble, and he had never bothered to look beyond it. When he arrived home, the grandeur of the mansion bothered him for the first time. So many empty rooms, so much wasted space. A pool he rarely used, expensive works of art that no one admired, and his sister, across town, with nothing to eat. John picked up the family painting and stared at it for a long time. The smiling faces of his ancestors seemed to gaze back at him with disapproval. They had built a close-knit family based on solid values, and he had broken that legacy out of pure vanity. He sat in his leather armchair, the painting in his lap, and allowed himself to cry for the first time in years. He cried for the lost time, for the nieces he hadn't seen grow up, for the sister he had abandoned. He cried out of shame and regret. When the tears dried, a question echoed in his mind. Why had Claire never asked for help? She knew where he worked, knew about his financial success. Even with all her pride, wouldn't a desperate mother swallow her pride for the sake of her children? The answer hit him like a punch. Claire never asked for help because she knew he didn't care. She knew him too well. She knew her brother had become so cold, so distant from their family values, that he would probably reject her. And that realization hurt more than anything. That night, John made a decision. He would change. He would right his wrongs. He would help Claire and his nieces, even if his sister resisted at first, not out of guilt or obligation, but because he finally understood what truly mattered in life. Family. 3 days passed. John could barely work. The image of the simple apartment, the clothes hanging in the window, the girls walking alone to school, it all swirled in his mind endlessly. The family painting, now hanging in his office, seemed to constantly remind him of his failure. He tried to distract himself with work, but for the first time, the numbers didn't make sense. Important contracts awaited his signature, but he couldn't concentrate. His assistants noticed the change, the distant gazes, the short answers. John Miller, always so focused and decisive, seemed lost in thought. On the 4th night, he couldn't take it anymore. He took the painting, placed it on the passenger seat of his car, and drove to the neighborhood where Claire lived. It was time to face the past, to try to fix what he had broken. He parked in front of the building. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange. John took a deep breath, gathering his courage. He held the painting tightly, as if it were a shield, or perhaps a symbol of peace. He climbed the building stairs slowly. The smell of mold and cheap cleaning products filled the air. The walls had damp stains. The paint was peeling in several places. The steps creaked under his feet. 5th floor, no elevator. How did Claire do this every day? He arrived, out of breath, on the top landing. The hallway had 4 doors, all worn by time. Which one did Claire live behind? He hesitated until he heard children's voices coming from the door on the left. He recognized them immediately. It was Sadie and Nora. John approached, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from his chest. He took another deep breath and knocked on the door. 3 soft taps. The voices inside the apartment fell silent. Light footsteps approached. "Who is it?" a female voice asked. "Claire." John froze. How should he answer? What could he say after so much time? "It's me." John. Silence. A silence so profound he could hear his own breathing. Then the sound of a lock turning, the door opened slowly. Claire stood there just a few feet away, thinner than he remembered, with a few new expression lines on her face, but still his sister. The same brown eyes, the same determined chin. She wore a simple t-shirt and faded jeans. Her hair, once always worn down, was tied back in a practical bun. For a moment, John saw the girl he played with as a child, the teenager with whom he shared secrets, the young adult he had pushed away out of pride. And then, he saw the shock on her face, followed by suspicion. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" Claire asked, her voice tense, her eyes wide. John swallowed hard. "Claire, I found the girls. They were selling this." He held up the painting. Claire looked at the painting, then back at John, her face hardened. "The girls went out to sell the painting. When was this?" She seemed genuinely surprised and concerned. "A few days ago. They were hungry, Claire." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing a blow. When she opened them again, there was determination in them. "You've been gone all these years. We don't need you." She tried to close the door, but John put his foot in the way. "Please, Claire. I just want to talk." "Mommy, who is it?" A child's voice came from inside the apartment. Claire hesitated. She looked back, then at John again. Reluctantly, she opened the door wider. Sadie and Nora appeared behind her, their curious eyes fixed on John. Recognition shone in their identical little faces. "It's the man from the diner," Sadie exclaimed, excited. "The one who bought our painting," Nora added. Claire looked at her daughters, then at John, connecting the dots. "You know him. He bought the painting and bought us burgers," Sadie explained. "He was really nice." "And he gave us $100, Nora added. "We bought a ton of food." Claire looked stunned. She glared at John with a mixture of confusion and irritation. "You gave my daughters money." "They were hungry, Claire," John repeated, more gently. "I couldn't just ignore it." The twins looked at each other, sensing the tension in the air. Sadie, the more observant one, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Do you know him, Mommy?" Claire sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping. "I do. He bought the painting." John understood the evasion. Claire didn't want to explain everything right then. Maybe she had never told the girls about him. "Can I come in?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. "Just to talk. I brought the painting back." Claire seemed torn. Her eyes went from the painting to John, to the girls, and back to John. Finally, she stepped aside. 5 minutes. John entered the small apartment. It was even more modest than he had imagined. A tiny living room that also served as a kitchen, 2 small bedrooms, old furniture. But everything was very clean and organized. Claire had always been organized, even in poverty. The girls looked at him with curiosity. They clearly didn't understand the tension between the adults. "The painting is yours now," Claire said, crossing her arms. "Tice, you paid for it." "It was never mine," John replied, placing it on the small table. "It belongs to the family. It always has." Claire didn't respond. She looked at her daughters and said, in a soft voice, "Girls, go to your room for a little bit. I need to talk with the man." "But, Mommy," Sadie began. "Please," Claire insisted. "Just for a little bit." Reluctantly, the twins went to their room but left the door ajar. John could see 2 little eyes peeking through the crack. When they were relatively alone, Claire turned to him, her eyes shining with restrained emotion. "What do you want, John?" "After all these years, What do you want from us? There was so much pain in that question that John felt as if he had been punched. What did he want? He wasn't even sure himself. Redemption? Family? A second chance? I want to help, Claire. We don't need your help, she retorted, pride evident in her voice. We're managing just fine. So fine that your 5-year-old daughters went out alone at night to sell the only valuable thing you owned. The question came out harsher than he intended. Claire flinched. That wasn't... I didn't know they... She took a deep breath, composing herself. What happened was a difficult moment. It's over now. It doesn't look like it's over, John insisted, looking around. This place, it's Claire. You deserve better than this. The girls deserve better. And who decides what we deserve? You? She took a step forward, defiant. You, who disappeared for 7 years, who didn't even know I had daughters. Who was too busy counting your money to remember you had a sister. Every word was true and hurt like a knife. John had no defense. I was wrong, Claire. I was very wrong. I was selfish, arrogant. He looked into her eyes. But I'm here now. I want to do the right thing. It's too late. It's never too late for family. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family? You forgot the meaning of that word a long time ago, John. He didn't answer immediately. He glanced at the ajar bedroom door, at the curious little eyes watching them. Maybe you're right, he said finally. Maybe I did forget. But I want to remember, Claire. I want to learn again. For a brief moment, the hardness in Claire's face faltered. But it soon returned. Your 5 minutes are up, John nodded. He knew he wouldn't get any further that day. 7 years couldn't be fixed in one conversation. I'll go, but I'll be back, Claire. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He walked to the door but stopped before leaving. The girls are amazing. You've done a great job. For an instant, he saw a flicker of pride in Claire's eyes. It was a start. Small, almost imperceptible, but it was a start. A week passed since the tense encounter between John and Claire. He tried to get back to work, but he couldn't concentrate. He signed documents without reading them, cancelled important meetings, ignored calls. His assistants exchanged worried glances. The powerful John Miller had never acted like this. Are you okay? His vice president asked during a meeting in which John had barely spoken. I'm fine, he answered automatically, looking out the skyscraper window. Down below, the city pulsed, indifferent to the personal dramas of its inhabitants. Somewhere in that maze of streets, his sister and his nieces were struggling to survive. That afternoon, John left the office early. He told his secretary he wouldn't be back for the rest of the week. He drove aimlessly for a while, until he found himself on the way to Claire's neighborhood. He hadn't planned on going there, but his instincts led him. He parked the car a few blocks from the building. He didn't want to seem intrusive. He walked slowly, thinking about what he would say if he ran into Claire. All the phrases he had rehearsed over the past few days seemed empty now. As he turned the corner, he saw 2 little girls playing on the sidewalk in front of the old building. Sadie and Nora were playing hopscotch on a makeshift drawing made with colored chalk. They wore simple clothes, faded shorts and t-shirts that looked a bit too big, but their faces were lit up with the joy of the game. John stopped, watching them from a distance. He wondered if he should just leave. Claire probably wouldn't like to see him approaching her daughters again. But before he could decide, Nora looked up and saw him. Look, Sadie, it's the painting man, she exclaimed, pointing. Sadie stopped her hopping and looked in the direction her sister was pointing. A smile spread across her face. John froze, not knowing how to react. He had expected rejection, not excitement. To his surprise, the girls abandoned their game and ran towards him. You came back, Sadie said, stopping in front of him. Did you bring more food? Nora asked, ever the practical one. John couldn't help but smile. Their innocence was refreshing after so many years of dealing only with calculating adults. Not today, he replied, crouching down to their level. I just came to see how you are. The twins exchanged glances, as if communicating silently. It was fascinating to observe this special bond between them. Mommy was really mad that day, Nora said, looking back at him. She was mad at us too, Sadie added, because of the painting. And for going out alone, Nora completed. John felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't meant to cause trouble for the girls. "I'm sorry about that," he said sincerely. "I didn't want you to get into trouble." "It's okay," Sadie shrugged. "Mommy wasn't mad for long." "But we liked you," Nora smiled shyly. "You're very nice." "Yeah," Sadie confirmed. "And Mommy is lonely. She doesn't have any big friends." "Big friends?" John repeated, confused. "Yeah, grown-up people like her," Nora explained with the simple logic of a 5-year-old. "There's just us, but we're little." John's heart ached. Claire was completely alone, with no adults to confide in or share her worries with, raising 2 children with no support. "Is your mum home now?" he asked, looking towards the building. "No," Sadie replied. "She went to look for a job. The neighbor watches us from the window." She pointed to an elderly lady watching from a first-floor window with a suspicious expression. John waved at the woman who narrowed her eyes but returned a hesitant wave. "Do you always play here?" he asked, turning his attention back to the girls. "When it's not raining," Nora said. "Mommy lets us play until she gets back." "And when does she get back?" "Before it gets dark," Sadie answered. "Sometimes she brings bread." The simplicity of the answer said a lot about their lives. Bread, something so basic, was mentioned as if it were a special treat. John looked at the girls, so small, so vulnerable, yet so resilient. He felt a wave of affection he hadn't experienced in years. These children were a part of him, a part of his family, his own flesh and blood. "Do you want to know a secret?" he asked, lowering his voice as if sharing something very important. The twins' eyes widened, and they moved closer, eager to listen. "I'm your mother's brother," John revealed. "We haven't seen each other in a long time. I was wrong to have stayed away, but I want to be a part of her life again. And a part of your lives." The girls stared at him, processing the information. For a moment, John feared they wouldn't believe him. "You're our uncle?" Sadie finally asked, her eyes wide. John nodded. "I am." "Like in the stories?" Nora asked. "Mommy reads us stories with uncles and aunts." "Yes, just like in the stories," John confirmed, smiling. "Why didn't you ever come before?" Sadie asked, tilting her head curiously. The simple question required a complex answer. How do you explain pride, resentment, and regret to 5-year-olds? I was lost," he finally answered. "Sometimes, adults get lost in a different way than children. Not on the streets, but in here." He touched his chest. "I got lost and it took me a long time to find my way back, but now I'm here." The girls seemed intrigued by this explanation but accepted it. "Are you going to stay?" Nora asked, her voice full of hope. "I'm going to try," John answered honestly. "But your mum has to want me to stay too." "Mommy is sad," Sadie said suddenly. "Why she cries at night when she thinks we're asleep." The revelation hit John like a punch. The image of Claire crying alone in the dark was too painful. "Can you help me get closer to your mum?" he asked after a moment of silence. "How?" Nora wanted to know. "I don't know exactly," John admitted, "but maybe you can say nice things about me to her. Tell her I want to be friends." The twins smiled, as if the idea of a secret mission excited them. "We can do that," Sadie agreed. "And you should bring a present for Mommy too," Nora suggested, practical as always. John laughed. "I'll think of something." They talked for a little longer until John realized it was getting dark. He didn't want Claire to arrive and find him there. She might think he was trying to influence her daughters behind her back. "I have to go now," he said, getting up. "But I'll be back tomorrow. I promise." "Really?" Sadie seemed unsure. "Really," John assured her, "and I'll bring a surprise." The girls smiled, but there was a hint of doubt in their little eyes. How many promises had they heard that hadn't been kept? The next day, John left the office early again. He stopped at a supermarket and filled a cart with groceries, fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, dairy, cereals, cookies, nutritious food that would last for weeks. Then, he stopped at a toy store and bought 2 identical teddy bears, some colorful children's books, and an educational game. He arrived in Claire's neighborhood in the late afternoon, carrying several bags. This time, he parked closer to the building. He had no reason to hide. The twins were in the same spot, drawing with colored chalk on the sidewalk. When they saw him, their faces lit up with identical smiles. "You really came back," Sadie exclaimed, running towards him. Nora followed right behind. "I promised, didn't I?" John smiled, putting the bags down. The girls looked curiously at the bags. John took out the teddy bears and handed one to each of them. "They're the same." Nora hugged the bear tightly. "Just like us," Sadie added, doing the same. "I brought a few more things," John said, showing them the books and the game. "And food for you and your mum." The girls' eyes sparkled when they saw the food. Sadie picked up a shiny red apple, admiring it as if it were a jewel. "Can I eat it now?" she asked. "Of course," John replied. "So it's for you." The twins bit into the apples with relish, the juice dripping from the corners of their mouths. John realized that fresh fruit was probably a rare luxury for them. He sat on the sidewalk, the bags beside him, and the girls settled down next to him. They ate their apples while he showed them the books he had brought, simple stories with lots of colorful illustrations. "Can you read?" Nora asked, impressed. "I can," John laughed. "All grown-ups can." "Not all of them," Sadie corrected. "The man at the bakery can't. He always asks Mommy to read the newspaper to him." John nodded, remembering that literacy wasn't universal, especially in poor neighborhoods. "Can I read you a story?" The girls nodded enthusiastically. John opened one of the books and began to read, giving different voices to each character. The twins laughed and asked questions, pointing at the illustrations. For a moment, John forgot about everything. The financial empire, the meetings, the problems. There was only him and his nieces, united by a simple story. "Do you go to school?" he asked when they finished the book. "We do," Sadie replied. "It's far, but we like it." "The teacher is nice," Nora added. "She gives us pictures to color." "And do you have many friends?" The girls exchanged glances. "Sort of," Sadie said. "Some kids don't like us." "Why?" John frowned. "Because we wear the same clothes over and over," Nora explained matter-of-factly, "and our lunch is always the same." John felt a pang of sadness. The girls were already facing social exclusion so early in life. "That's going to change," he promised, though he wasn't exactly sure how he would fulfill that promise without interfering too much in Claire's life. They continued talking, the girls becoming more and more comfortable with him. They told him about their routine, their favorite games, what they learned at school. John listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at their simple stories. It was like rediscovering the world through their eyes. During a pause, Nora looked at him seriously. "Are you going to disappear too?" The question caught him by surprise. "What do you mean?" "Like Daddy," Sadie explained. "Mommy says he didn't want to go, but he had to." "Will you have to go too?" John understood what they meant. The girls were afraid of getting attached to him and then losing him, just as they had lost their father. "No," he replied firmly. "I'm not going to disappear. Not ever again." "Promise," Nora insisted. "I promise." And John knew he would keep that promise, no matter what. The girls smiled, looking relieved. Suddenly, Sadie stood up. "Come on, Nora, let's go tell Mommy." "Tell her what?" John asked, confused. "That you're our uncle and you brought food," Sadie replied, as if it were obvious. Before John could protest, the twins grabbed their teddy bears and ran into the building. He was left there, sitting on the sidewalk, surrounded by grocery bags, unsure if he should leave or wait. A few minutes later, he heard excited children's voices coming down the stairs. The girls reappeared, pulling Claire by the hand. "See, Mommy, it's him." Sadie pointed. "He brought food and toys," Nora added. "And he said he's our uncle." Claire stopped when she saw John sitting on the sidewalk with the bags. She was wearing a simple dress and looked tired, as if she had been walking a lot. For a moment, their eyes met, and John saw the internal battle she was waging. "Mommy, let him talk to you," Sadie pleaded. "He's nice. He read us a story," Nora insisted. "And he brought apples." Claire observed the scene with an unreadable expression. She noticed the shopping bags, the books scattered on the sidewalk, the teddy bears her daughters were hugging. She saw the genuine excitement in the girls, so different from their usual wariness of strangers. Something in her gaze shifted. It wasn't exactly forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of an opening. "You can play a little longer," she told her daughters. "I'm going to take the groceries upstairs." John quickly stood up. "Let me carry them." Claire hesitated, but then nodded. He took the heavier bags and she took the lighter ones. They climbed the 5 flights of stairs in silence, the steps creaking under their feet. In the small apartment, John placed the groceries on the kitchen table. Claire began to put the food away, meticulously organizing everything in the nearly empty cabinets. "You didn't have to do this," she finally said, without looking at him. "I wanted to," John replied. "It's not charity, Claire. It's family." She didn't answer, continuing to put away the groceries. John respected her silence and went back to the sidewalk, where the girls were waiting for him eagerly. In the following weeks, John established a routine. He visited the twins every afternoon, always bringing something, sometimes food, sometimes just a new book or art supplies. He would sit with them on the sidewalk, listen to their stories, laugh at their simple jokes, and answer their endless questions. Claire kept her distance, but John noticed she was watching from the window. Gradually, her expression changed, from initial suspicion to what seemed like reluctant acceptance. One evening, as the sky was getting dark, John was reading a story to the girls when he sensed a presence. He looked up from the book and saw Claire standing a few feet away, watching them. "It's getting late," she said, her voice softer than he remembered. "You should come inside, girls." "Oh, Mommy, just a little longer," Sadie pleaded. "Uncle John is at the best part." John froze. It was the first time the girls had called him Uncle Tao in front of Claire. He braced for a negative reaction, but to his surprise, Claire just sighed. "All right, just a little longer." And then, to John's complete astonishment, she quietly sat down beside them on the sidewalk. The girls smiled, snuggling between their mother and their newly discovered uncle. John resumed reading, his voice slightly shaky with emotion. From time to time, he would glance sideways at Claire. She kept her eyes fixed on the book, but there was a new softness on her face. It was just a small moment, a minimal gesture, but to John it meant everything. It was the beginning of something new, the beginning of forgiveness. The days turned into weeks. John was now a part of the twins. Routine. Every afternoon, he would show up with something new, a book, a game, or simply his time. The girls would eagerly wait for him on the sidewalk, running to him as soon as his car appeared around the corner. To them, Uncle John was like a magical character who brought joy into their simple lives. Claire watched this growing closeness with mixed feelings. On one hand, she saw her daughter's happiness. On the other, she couldn't forget the 7 years of absence. The hurt still stung, even as she noticed the sincerity in her brother's gestures. On a rainy Friday, the girls couldn't play on the sidewalk. John showed up anyway, soaked, carrying a box of pizza and a new board game. Claire hesitated, but eventually invited him in. The twins celebrated, dragging their uncle to the worn-out living room rug, while Claire prepared hot chocolate in the small kitchen. She watched the scene from a distance, John sitting on the floor, patiently explaining the rules of the game. Sadie and Nora laughing, competing, innocently cheating. There was a naturalness to their interaction that surprised her, as if he had always been there. "Mommy, come play with us," Nora called out. Claire hesitated, but then joined them on the rug. They played for hours, ate pizza and drank hot chocolate. The girls laughed so hard their stomachs hurt. When they finally fell asleep, exhausted, John helped Claire carry them to bed. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. They stayed in the small living room, Claire sitting on the sofa, John in the only armchair. The rain beat against the window, creating a curtain of sound that seemed to isolate them from the world. "They really like you," Claire finally said, breaking the silence. "I like them too," John replied. "They're amazing kids, Claire." "They are." Another silence. John looked at his sister. Really looked. He saw the dark circles under her eyes, the calloused hands, the tense shoulders of someone carrying too heavy a burden. He saw the young, dream-filled woman he once knew, transformed into a woman hardened by life. "Claire," he began, his voice low, "we need to talk." She faced him. About what? About everything. About these 7 years. About what happened? Claire let out a weary sigh. I don't know if I'm ready for that, John. I don't think we'll ever be fully ready, he replied. But we need to try. She was silent for a moment, then nodded. Where do you want to start? Wherever you want. I'm here to listen. Claire stood up and walked to the window. She stood with her back to John, watching the rain fall. Do you know why I never looked for you? She asked, without turning around, even when I had nothing to feed the girls. Pride? John ventured. Claire let out a humorless laugh. No, it was because I knew you didn't care. She turned to face him. You were always selfish, John. You always thought about yourself. When I needed you most, you weren't there. The words hit John like a punch, not because of the accusation itself, but because of the quiet certainty with which Claire spoke them. There was no anger in her voice, just a sad realization. When our parents died, she continued, you organized the funeral like a business. Efficient, practical. You took care of everything and went back to your life. You didn't even notice I was falling apart. John lowered his eyes. He remembered those days, the pride he had felt for having handled everything without showing weakness. Then, when I met David and fell in love, you didn't even try to get to know him. You judged him by his appearance, his simple job, his lack of ambition. You didn't see the good man he was. John felt a lump in his throat. David, the girl's father, someone he had rejected without giving a chance. When I told you I was pregnant, you acted like it was a tragedy. How are you going to support a child? You're throwing your life away. Remember those words, John. It was twins, by the way. 2 lives you considered a mistake. Claire, No, let me finish. She held up a hand. When David died in that accident, 3 months before the girls were born, I called you. Remember that I was desperate, alone, pregnant with twins, with no money for the funeral. You know what you said? That you would transfer the money, but you were too busy to come. That I should have thought more about my choices. John closed his eyes, shame burning his face. He vaguely remembered that call. He had been closing a big deal, irritated by the interruption. You transferred the money, you solved the practical problem, as always. But you weren't there to hug me, to tell me everything was going to be okay, to hold my hand at the funeral of the man I loved. Claire's voice broke for the first time. She took a deep breath before continuing. The girls were born, and I sent you pictures. You replied with a generic message. I sent an invitation to their baptism. You sent an expensive gift by mail, but you didn't show up. After that, I gave up. John listened in silence, absorbing every word. Every accusation was true. Every painful memory was real. He had no defense. I tried, John, several times, but you were always too busy, always too focused on your success to care about your only sister and your nieces. Claire sat back down on the sofa, looking suddenly exhausted. So no, it wasn't pride that kept me from looking for you when we were starving. It was because I already knew the answer. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with painful memories. The rain continued to beat against the window. Indifferent to the drama unfolding within those simple walls, John felt tears streaming down his face. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried, maybe at his parents' funeral, hidden in the bathroom so no one would see his weakness. Now he made no effort to hide it. Forgive me, Claire, he pleaded, his voice choked. I should have come back. I should have been by your side. She watched him, surprised by the display of emotion from her always so controlled brother. You're right about everything, John continued. I was selfish, arrogant, insensitive. I put work, success, money above everything. Above the people who really mattered. He stood up, pacing the small room as if he needed movement to organize his thoughts. When our parents died, I shut down. I didn't know how to deal with the pain, so I threw myself into work. It was easier to focus on spreadsheets and meetings than to feel the grief. And it worked. I rose in the company, made money, built a reputation. He stopped in front of the wall where there were a few pictures of the twins, smiling babies, first steps, simple birthdays, moments he had missed. But the more successful I became, the emptier I felt. I filled that void with things, cars, watches, a huge house. I ignored the fact that I came home to an empty mansion every night. He turned to Claire. I thought money was everything, and I lost the most important thing, my family. Claire didn't answer, but her eyes were misty. When I saw the girls selling the painting, it was like something broke inside me. Suddenly, all the lies I told myself crumbled. I saw what I had become, a rich, empty man with no real connections, no one who truly cared about me beyond my money. John sat back down in the armchair, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. I'm not asking you to forget these 7 years. I'm not expecting you to erase all the hurt with an apology. I'm just asking for a chance to do things differently from now on. How to be the brother I never was, the uncle the girls deserve. Claire wiped away a tear that was trickling down her face. Why now, John? What really changed? I changed, he answered simply. Or maybe I just found myself after being lost for so long. I can't explain it well. I just know that when I saw those 2 little girls hungry, something woke up in me. Something that had been dormant for years. They fell silent again, but this time it was a different silence, less tense, more reflective. The rain had subsided, turning into a light drizzle that drummed softly against the window. I don't know if I can forgive everything so quickly, Claire said finally, but I see that you're trying. And the girls, they adore you. I love them, John said, surprising himself with how easily the word love left his lips. And I love you, Claire. You're my sister, my only family. I'm so sorry it took me so long to realize that. Claire didn't say she loved him too. She wasn't ready for that yet. But she nodded, acknowledging his words. What do you want, John? From us? From this reconnection. It was a fair question. John took a deep breath before answering. I want to be a part of your lives. I want to help. Not out of pity or guilt, but because we're family. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. And I want to propose something. Claire raised her eyebrows, curious. My house is too big for one person. It has 6 bedrooms, a huge garden, a library full of books no one reads. It's empty, lifeless. John looked into his sister's eyes. I want you to come live with me, you and the girls. Claire's eyes widened, clearly surprised by the proposal. That's crazy, she replied automatically. Why, you'd have space, comfort, security. The girls would have their own room. They could run in the garden, use the pool. You could go back to school if you wanted, or work in something you really love. I don't want your charity, John. It's not charity, he retorted firmly. It's family. That house belonged to our parents before it was mine. Half of it should have been yours anyway. Claire bit her lip, thoughtful. I don't know, John. It's a very big change. Think about the girls, he insisted gently. About their future, the opportunities they would have. Wouldn't it be weird, living in your house after being apart for so long? It probably would be at first, John admitted. But we could try, day by day, build something new. Claire didn't answer immediately. She looked towards the hallway that led to the room where the twins were sleeping. John could see the thoughts passing across her face. Temptation, fear, hope, distrust. A noise from the hallway interrupted the moment. Sadie and Nora were standing at the entrance to the living room, their hair disheveled, their eyes sleepy. We can't sleep, Sadie said. It's raining hard. Can we stay with you for a little bit? Nora asked. Claire smiled, opening her arms. Come here, my little ones. The girls ran to the sofa, snuggling up to their mother. John watched the scene with a smile. Family. Something so simple and so complex at the same time. What were you talking about? Sadie asked, curious as always. Claire and John exchanged a look. Uncle John was inviting me to something, Claire answered vaguely. What thing? Nora insisted. John hesitated, looking at Claire as if asking for permission. She gave a small nod. I was inviting you to live in my house, John explained. It's a big house set with a garden and a pool. The twins' eyes widened. A big house? Like a mansion? Sadie asked, fascinated. Sort of, John smiled. Does it have a real pool? Nora wanted to know. It does. Can we go, Mommy? Sadie turned to Claire, her eyes shining. Please. It's complicated, honey, Claire tried to explain. We have our life here, your school. But it must be so much cooler there, Nora argued. and Uncle John would always be with us. You would have your own room, John added, with space for all your toys. Our own room? Sadie seemed not to believe it. Sammy and Nora. You could each have your own if you wanted, John explained, or share a really big one. The twins looked at each other, enchanted by the idea. Please, Mommy, Nora pleaded. We want to go. Claire looked at her daughters, then at John. There was hesitation in her eyes, but also a spark of something that looked like hope. I'll think about it, she promised. It's not a simple decision. The girls celebrated as if it were already a yes. John and Claire exchanged another look, one that said a lot without words. The proposal was on the table, the seed was planted, the future, still uncertain, seemed a little brighter on that rainy night. As the twins fell back asleep on the sofa, between their mother and their uncle, John realized something important. Regardless of Claire's answer, something had changed that night. The difficult words had been said, the hurts exposed, the regrets confessed. It was a beginning, a new beginning. And that, for now, was enough. The move to John's mansion brought significant changes. The girls delightedly explored every corner of the huge house, ran through the garden, and quickly adapted to their new school. Claire, however, still felt like a stranger in this luxurious environment, even after 2 months. Gradually, she added plants to the veranda, colorful curtains in the kitchen, small touches that made the space more welcoming. On a sunny Saturday, Claire watched Sadie and Nora playing in the newly renovated garden by John. The girls ran on the grass, their laughter echoing in the air. It was good to see them like this, just children, without the weight of poverty on their small shoulders. John approached with a tray. I brought lemonade. The girls must be thirsty. Claire thanked him, but as she tried to stand up, she felt the world spin, a sudden dizziness, stronger than the previous ones. Her legs gave way and everything went dark. When she came to D, she was on the living room sofa. John was holding her hand, his face tense with worry. What happened? She asked, her voice weak. You fainted, John replied. You were out for almost a minute. It's just exhaustion, she murmured. I'll be fine. It's not just exhaustion, John countered. So we need to see a doctor. Where are the girls? With Rosa. They didn't see anything. I told them you were resting. Claire nodded, grateful for the discretion. I don't want to worry them. Me neither, John agreed. But I want you to be well. We're going to the doctor now. They went to a nearby health clinic. Claire refused the private clinic John had suggested. I don't need luxury, just a doctor. The doctor examined Claire carefully. He measured her blood pressure, checked her eyes, and asked several questions. How long have you been feeling this dizziness? He asked. A few months, maybe. Any other symptoms? Excessive thirst? Fatigue? Blurred vision? She nodded slowly. Sometimes. I thought it was just stress. They did a blood sugar test and some basic exams. John stayed by Claire's side throughout the process. An hour later, the doctor called them in again. Mrs. Miller, your blood sugar is very high. I suspect diabetes, but we need more detailed tests to confirm. Is it serious? John asked, tense. Diabetes is a serious condition, but it's treatable. With proper monitoring, medication, and lifestyle changes, your sister can lead a normal life. On the way back, John drove in silence. Claire looked out the window, processing the news. You're going to be okay, John said. We'll take care of this together. When they arrived, the girls came running. Mommy, where did you go? Nora asked. We went to take care of some things, Claire replied with a forced smile. Is everything okay here? Yes, Rosa made cookies, Sadie exclaimed. There are some saved for you. That night, after the girls were asleep, John knocked on Claire's bedroom door. He found her sitting in the armchair by the window. Can we talk? He asked. Claire nodded. John sat on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling? Fine, she answered automatically. Then, seeing her brother's skeptical look, she sighed. Actually, tired and a little scared. It's normal to be scared. Claire bit her lip. I've been feeling this dizziness for months. And thirst. So much thirst. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night to drink water, and leg pains, cramps. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want to worry anyone. The girls have been through so much. Claire wiped away a tear. And maybe I didn't want to seem weak or sick. I didn't want you to think I only got close to you because of your help. Claire, you are the strongest person I know. Raising 2 daughters alone, without help, going through hardships I can't even imagine. That requires a strength few people have. I need you to do these tests, John said. For you, for the girls, please? Claire nodded. I'll do them. The next morning, John had already scheduled an appointment with a specialist. In the following days, Claire underwent several tests. John accompanied her at every step, rearranging his work schedule. A week later, they sat before the endocrinologist. Mrs. Miller, we've confirmed the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, he said. Your blood sugar is unregulated, which explains the fainting and other symptoms. Claire squeezed John's hand. Is it something we can control? She asked, and her voice trembling. Absolutely. With the right medication, a balanced diet, and regular exercise, you can lead a completely normal life. In the car, Claire finally broke the silence. I never went to the doctor regularly, even before the financial struggles. After I was alone, I didn't have the money. The girls were the priority. Vaccines, a pediatrician when possible. I always came second. I can't remember the last time someone took care of me, she admitted, her voice choked with emotion. Since our parents died, since David was gone, I was always the caregiver, never the one being cared for. John reached for his sister's hand. That's changed now. You're not alone anymore. In the following days, John reorganized the household routine. He talked to the cook about a diet suitable for diabetics. He bought a glucose meter and learned how to use it with Claire. He researched diabetes, read articles, and joined online support groups. The girls noticed the changes in their diet, but accepted the simple explanation. Mommy needs to eat special foods to get stronger. To Claire's surprise, they embraced the new diet with enthusiasm, wanting to get strong like Mommy. A week after the diagnosis, Claire was watching her daughters in the garden again, this time with a glass of unsweetened tea in her hand. John sat down beside her. How are you feeling? He asked. Better, she replied honestly. The dizziness has lessened, and that constant thirst is gone too. So the medication is working. Thank you, John, for all of this. You don't have to thank me. It's what family does. Still, she looked at her brother. I never thought I'd be here. When the girls were born, when David died, I thought I'd be alone forever. John smiled. You'll never be alone again, Claire. I promise. In the garden, Sadie and Nora waved, calling them over to see something they had discovered. Claire and John stood up together, walking towards the girls. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt truly cared for. Not just physically, with doctors and medicine, but emotionally. She had a home again. She had a complete family. The days in the mansion took on a new rhythm after Claire's diagnosis. Mornings began with checking her blood sugar, followed by a specially prepared breakfast. The girls went to school in the car with a driver John had insisted on hiring, despite Claire's protests. It's safer, he argued, and you need to rest. Adapting to the diabetes treatment brought a more structured routine for everyone. Regular mealtimes, walks in the garden in the late afternoon, adequate sleep. John surprised everyone, including himself, by drastically reducing his hours at the office to be more present at home. Don't your employees complain? Claire asked one morning as they had coffee on the veranda. John smiled. Actually, they seem relieved. I think I was a very demanding and overly present boss. I have no doubt, Claire joked, recalling her brother's perfectionism since childhood. These small conversations during meals or walks through the garden were rebuilding the intimacy between the siblings. They talked about the past, memories of childhood, of their parents, of teenage antics. They talked about the present, the girls, Claire's treatment, John's projects, and slowly they began to talk about the future. On a particularly pleasant afternoon, they sat by the pool while the twins swam with floaties under Rosa's watchful eye. Claire wore a straw hat to protect herself from the sun, a medical recommendation for those taking certain medications. Yeah, they're loving the pool, John commented, watching his nieces who were laughing and splashing water at each other. They had never swum before, Claire replied. "Just in the neighborhood where we lived. The only option was a public pool far away, and I never had the time or money to take them." John nodded, feeling the familiar pang in his chest as he remembered the hardships his nieces had faced. "They learn fast. Soon they'll be swimming without the floaties." "Sadie is more courageous," Claire observed. "Nora is still a bit afraid of the deep end." "Like us," John commented. "You were always the adventurous one. I was more cautious." Claire smiled at the memory. "It's true. Remember when we went to the lake at our grandparents' house? You didn't want to go in because you were afraid of stepping on something at the bottom. And you dived in head first, without a second thought." John laughed. "Some things never change." The silence that followed was comfortable, filled only by the laughter of the girls in the pool. John took a sip of his lemon water and looked at his sister, thoughtfully. "Can I ask you something?" Claire turned to him. "Of course. About the girl's father." John hesitated, unsure if he should continue. Claire looked at her daughters, a sad smile on her lips. "David." "Yes. You never told me much about him." Claire took a deep breath, adjusting herself on the lounge chair. "What do you want to know?" "Everything you're willing to tell me," John replied. "What he was like, how you met. Only if you want to talk about it, of course." Claire was silent for a moment, as if organizing her thoughts and memories. "He was a very good man, John. Hard-working, honest, despite all the difficulties. He was poor, but he would do anything for us. Unfortunately, he died in a car accident, shortly before the girls were born. I've had to face everything alone since then." John listened in silence, with a look of respect and empathy. He remembered how he had judged David without even knowing him, based solely on prejudices about his financial status. "We met in college," Claire continued. "He worked at the campus coffee shop to pay for his studies. He was studying engineering, but had to drop out in his third year when his mother got sick. He needed to work full-time to pay for her treatment." "I didn't know," John murmured. "How could you? You never wanted to meet him." There was no accusation in Claire's voice, just a statement of fact. "He fixed things. He had a natural talent for it. After a few temporary jobs, he got a job at a car repair shop. He didn't earn much, but we were happy." Claire smiled at the memory. "When we found out I was pregnant, he was so happy, John. He had already bought a teddy bear before we even knew they were girls. And when the ultrasound showed it was twins, my God, he cried so much." Claire's voice faltered. John realized that, despite the years, the pain of loss was still there. The accident happened when he was coming home from work, on a rainy night. A truck lost control and hit his car head-on. He died instantly. Claire wiped away a tear. "I was 7 months pregnant. The girls were born a month later, premature. I think they felt my pain, my grief." John didn't know what to say. Any words seemed insufficient in the face of so much suffering. He felt ashamed of his earlier judgment, of his arrogance in thinking he knew what was best for his sister. "I'm so sorry," he said finally, "for everything. For not being there when you needed me." Claire nodded, accepting his apology. "David would have been a wonderful father. Sometimes I see traces of him in the girls. Sadie's smile is identical to his, and Nora has the same thoughtful way about her. Do they know about him? The basics, that he was good, that he loved us, that he went to heaven before they were born. I have some pictures I've shown them. When they're older, I'll tell them more." John nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for sharing that with me." Claire smiled slightly. "Thank you for asking, for wanting to know." Without big words, John just reached out his hand and squeezed Claire's firmly, a silent promise that she would no longer be alone, that the family was reunited again, even if incomplete. The moment was interrupted by the girls who came running out of the pool, wet and smiling. "Uncle John, look what we can do," Sadie exclaimed, jumping back into the water with a small dive. "Me too," Nora followed, imitating her sister with less skill but equal enthusiasm. John clapped, genuinely impressed. "You're almost swimming on your own." "Rosa taught us," Sadie explained. "She said she used to swim in a river when she was little." Claire cast a grateful glance at the housekeeper, who smiled shyly. That afternoon stretched into laughter and games. They had dinner together on the veranda, enjoying the mild weather. The girls told stories from school, made up nonsensical jokes that made everyone laugh. It was a simple, familiar scene, but for Claire and John, it represented something they had both lost and now rediscovered, a sense of belonging. When the girls finally went to bed, exhausted from swimming and playing, the siblings sat in the living room with cups of tea. The television was on at a low volume, more as background noise than entertainment. "Claire," John began, placing his cup on the coffee table, "I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" she asked, curious about her brother's serious tone. "About the girls' education." Claire nodded, attentive. "The school they're at is good, matter, but—" John hesitated, choosing his words. "I've been researching, and there's an institution in the Central District that has a really excellent educational program. Focus on arts, sciences, diverse extracurricular activities." "Sounds great," Claire commented. "It is. I visited unannounced to see how it really works." "I was impressed." Claire smiled at her brother's typical gesture. "Always suspicious, cautious," he corrected, also smiling. "Anyway, what do you think about the girls studying there?" Claire hesitated, her cup suspended in mid-air. "John, schools like that are incredibly expensive. Even with the job I got, I can't afford something at that level." Claire had recently started working part-time as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic, a position that came up through one of John's contacts, but one she earned on her own merit in a tough interview. "I know," John replied. "John, and that's where I want to help." Claire put her cup on the table, uncomfortable. "I don't know, John. You already do so much. The house, the medical treatment." "Claire, look at me," John pleaded, leaning forward. "I'm not doing this out of obligation or pity. I'm doing it because I want to, because I can. Because they deserve every possible opportunity, but their education is an investment in their future. And honestly, what am I going to do with all this money? Buy more things I don't need?" John smiled. "Let me do this, please." Claire looked at her brother, studying his face. There was no condescension there, just a genuine desire to help. "You really have changed," she commented finally. "For the better, I hope." Claire took a deep breath. "All right, but I want to visit it first, to see if it's a good environment for them." "Of course," John agreed, excited. "We can go tomorrow." The next morning, after breakfast, John drove to the school. It was an elegant yet welcoming building, with spacious grounds and modern facilities. The girls, who didn't know the reason for the visit, were curious and excited. "What's this place, Mommy?" Nora asked, looking out the car window. "A school," Claire replied. "We came to visit." "Is it our new school?" Sadie asked, ever perceptive. "Maybe," John replied, exchanging a knowing look with Claire. "Let's see if you like it first." They were greeted by the principal, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile and an intelligent gaze. She guided them through the facilities, spacious classrooms, well-equipped labs, an impressive library, sports courts, a music room, an art studio. The girls were amazed by the books, toys, and colors. Their eyes sparkled with each new discovery. In the library, Sadie ran to the children's section, reverently flipping through illustrated books. In the music room, Nora hesitantly played a few keys on the piano, enchanted by the sound. "I've never seen so many books," Sadie whispered to Claire. "Dusim, and is that piano real?" Nora asked, impressed. The principal explained the pedagogical program, extracurricular activities, and evaluation system. Claire asked many questions, all answered with clarity and patience. John watched the interaction, pleased to see his sister was genuinely involved in the process. "And we have spots for both of them in the same class, and if you prefer," the principal concluded, "or in separate classes, if you think it's better for their individual development." "Together, for now," Claire replied without hesitation. "They've never been apart." At the end of the visit, the principal left them alone to talk. The girls were in the reading room, entertained by the books and under the watchful eye of an assistant. "What did you think?" John asked. "It's incredible," Claire admitted. "Much better than any school I could have dreamed of for them." "So?" Claire looked at her daughters, so absorbed in the books, so amazed by everything. She felt a lump in her throat thinking about all the opportunities this school could open up for them. "Yes," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. If they want to, of course. John smiled, squeezing his sister's shoulder in a gesture of support. Let's ask them, then. They approached the girls and who looked up from their books. So, John began, what did you think of this place? It's so cool, Sadie exclaimed. It has so many books and toys, Nora added, and a big piano. Would you like to study here? Claire asked. The twins looked at each other, as they always did when they wanted to confirm they were thinking the same thing. Can we really? Sadie asked, uncertain. If you want to, Claire replied. We want to, they exclaimed in unison, jumping for joy. Sadie hugged her mother tightly, while Nora threw herself into John's arms. When do we start? Nora asked. Next week, if everything goes well with the enrollment, John replied. The girls celebrated again, talking at the same time about everything they wanted to learn and do at the new school. Claire watched the scene, moved. A few months ago, she could barely put food on the table. Now her daughters would have access to an education she never dreamed was possible. She murmured a silent thank you to John, who just nodded, understanding the significance of the moment. On the way home, the girls couldn't stop talking about the school. The books they saw, the toys, the indoor pool where they would have swimming lessons, the music class where they could learn piano or violin. Claire looked out the car window, watching the city pass by. She thought of David, of how happy he would be to see his daughters with so many opportunities. She thought of her parents, who had always valued education above all else. She thought of herself, the young woman full of dreams she once was. Life had been hard, with painful twists and devastating losses. But now, finally, it seemed a new chapter was beginning. A chapter of rebuilding, of healing, of new possibilities, a family again. Not exactly as before, nor as she had imagined, but family nonetheless. And for the first time in many years, Claire allowed herself to believe that the future could be bright. A year had passed since Claire and the girls moved into John's house. A year of transformations, adjustments, and above all, healing. The mansion, once silent and empty, now overflowed with life. Laughter echoes through the hallways, children's music plays in the living room, and occasionally forgotten toys appear in the most unlikely places. Dolls seated at the formal dining table, colorful blocks in John's office, children's books on the coffee table. What was once just an imposing structure has become a true home. In the garden, the flowers John had planted bloom in vibrant colors. Roses, daisies, sunflowers, creating a multicolored carpet that enchants visitors. The girls have their own little patch to grow strawberries and cherry tomatoes, which they proudly harvest for breakfast. Look, Mommy, I planted this one, Nora exclaims every time she finds a particularly red strawberry. Sadie, always competitive, compares the size of her tomatoes to her sister's. Mine is bigger today. Sadie and Nora now attend the elite school John suggested, but they remain the same sweet and authentic children. They adapted quickly, making friends, discovering talents and expanding horizons once limited by scarcity. Sadie shows a special gift for painting. Her watercolors already decorate several spaces in the house, including John's office. Nora has surprised everyone with her facility for music. She can already play small melodies on the piano and has started violin lessons. Every afternoon when they come home from school, it's an explosion of stories. Mister, George said my drawing is the best in the class. I learned a new song on the piano. We did an experiment with plants. John and Claire listen with genuine interest, celebrating each small achievement as if it were extraordinary, because, for them, it truly is. John, once solely immersed in work, now masterfully balances his professional and family responsibilities. He has reduced his hours at the office, delegated more tasks, and learned to say no to unnecessary commitments. Even his employees notice the change. The once obsessive and perfectionist boss now smiles more, shows more patience, and prioritizes what truly matters. He's become not just a present uncle, but a father figure to the twins. On Sundays, he's the one who makes pancakes for breakfast, a tradition that started by chance and is now sacred. One more, Uncle John, the girls ask, and he never says no, even when the stack is already too high. Don't tell Mommy's doctor, he whispers, placing another pancake on Claire's plate, who feigns indignation before accepting with a knowing smile. Claire has blossomed in this new environment. Her diabetes is under control. The color has returned to her cheeks, and her smile, once rare, now appears easily. The woman who seemed to have aged prematurely under the weight of hardship has regained the youth and lightness that suffering had stolen. She works part-time at the medical clinic, where she has earned the respect and admiration of her colleagues for her efficiency and empathy. She recently started a specialization course in hospital administration, an old dream she was finally able to pursue. "It's never too late to start over," John said when she hesitated to enroll. And he was right. The evenings at the house are peaceful, filled with small rituals they've built together. Dinners at the table, with everyone sharing the day's events, reading sessions before bed, where even John participates, making funny voices for the characters that draw giggles from his nieces. Conversations on the veranda after the girls fall asleep, where the siblings talk about the past, the present, and increasingly, about the future. The pain that marked their lives has not been forgotten. Claire still keeps a photo of David on her bedside table and lights a candle on his birthday. The girls still ask about their father from time to time, eager for stories that connect their lives to the man they never knew. John still feels guilty for the lost years, for the moments he could have shared. But these pains have been transformed, from open wounds to scars that tell stories of overcoming and new beginnings. On a particularly sunny spring Sunday, the whole family is gathered in the garden. John has set up a grill and is making burgers while telling bad jokes that make everyone laugh, not at the jokes themselves, but at the clumsy way he tells them. Rosa, the housekeeper who has become part of the family, brings a pitcher of fresh lemonade and homemade cookies that are devoured in minutes. Claire, sitting on a lounge chair, watches her daughters running among the flowers. She wears a light dress, her hair loose in the wind, her feet bare on the grass. She looks younger, lighter. The weight of the world is no longer exclusively on her shoulders. "Are you happy?" John asks, sitting down beside her. Claire smiles, a genuine smile that lights up her eyes. "I am. I didn't even remember what this felt like." Inside the house, in the main living room, two contrasting images share the wall. The old Miller family painting, restored and lovingly framed, shows their formal ancestors in front of the country estate. Beside it, a colorful drawing made by Sadie at school. 4 stick figures, 2 small, 2 large, holding hands under a blue sky where a golden star shines. "It's Daddy watching over us from heaven," she explained when she brought the drawing home. They are not a perfect or conventional family. They are a family rebuilt from the ashes of loss and mistakes, stitched together with threads of regret, forgiveness, and second chances. They are real, with rough edges and imperfections, but deeply happy in the simplicity of being together. Love at last had found its way back. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.